I was saying to my wife earlier on the way back that it's amazing how what is meant for evil God brings around for good. Genesis 50 verse 20. Because I'm even thinking, I think sometimes it's important to rehearse your testimony, to look back at the things in which you could take for granted, but really God was in the moment. You know, Revelation 12:11 says that we're overcomers by the blood of the Lamb and the power of our testimony. And I was looking back and thinking about this on the drive home today. And when I was about 14, I think I was about 14, yeah, I was out one night with friends and a car drove up beside me and a bunch of men jumped out of the car. So 5 men jumped out of the car and they gave me what can only be considered a hiding, right? So they attacked me. But it was a case of mistaken identity and all of that business. But I remember at the time, I was, like I told people before, I was full of pride. And I remember I was on the ground, I'd been headbutted, kicked and stuff on the ground. And I got up and I chased the car afterwards. And praise God they didn't stop, right? But I remember thinking, really, I was really hard done by at the time. Like, what kind of group of adults jumps out and attacks a kid? And I remember thinking about this time. It sort of annoyed me for years to come because I was thinking if it was only one-on-one, and that was the stupid thoughts that was going through my head. But then, by the time I reached 18, because I'd reported at the police and I'd been seen by the police and the doctors and all of that sort of stuff, I was awarded a claim. That wasn't very much, but it was enough to take me on holiday. So I was awarded a claim for a kid, as a kid, being beat up by a bunch of adults, a bunch of grown men. And I thought, all right, okay, I've got like enough to go on holiday here. So I took the money. I went on a holiday with my friends and didn't think much of it. But then I met Kelly, my now wife of like 23 years, 24, almost 24 years, yeah. And I met her on that holiday. And when you think about it, you know, little things that happen along your life, you can take and see with tunnel vision, and you can go, oh, I went through that, and I went through that, and oh, that was hard, or that was hard. But if you actually see what God does with it, I wouldn't have been able to, I was a student, didn't have a lot of money growing up, and I wouldn't have been able to afford to go on holiday other than that. But that made the way, and it made the way for me to meet my future wife. The wife and the mother of my 5 children. And all that came off the back of 5 men jumping out of a car and beating up a kid. And that's what I'm saying is if you look at what God does, God brings about good out of what the enemy uses for, or brings to us for evil purposes. So whatever you're going through, whatever comes against you, I think it's sometimes really encouraging to look back at the points in your life and think, if God wasn't in the scene, I wouldn't be at this point now. I wouldn't have been able to come through that. You know, you can see this over and over and over again. I can see this all the way through my life, you know, that if God hadn't intervened in these stages, then I wouldn't have been able to come through that. And even the lowest points in my life, I can honestly thank God for bringing me through those positions, bringing me past those, bringing me out past those positions or past those events or circumstances. And yet at the time, I remember thinking, oh, the whole world is caving in. You know my testimony, at least part of my testimony, excuse me. And when my marriage broke up, I thought it was the lowest point in my life. And now I look back on it as a complete and utter necessity, because my wife would never have accepted Christ unless we had got to that valley moment, right? And until she had seen Christ in me. So it took me to be brought through the mire and the rubbish of life, you know, and to go through that, but to bring her into that point of salvation. And when I put the two of them together, I was thinking, I actually said to my wife today, I says that I think God purposed me and maneuvered things about so I would be intrinsically involved in her salvation. You know, I even said to her that before, you know, my wife's name's Kelly. She's originally from Essex, although she was brought up in Edinburgh. And I had actually had a girlfriend for a short stint before then that I thought, oh, this is the one and stuff, and happened to be a girl called Kelly from Essex. Completely different girl. But it took... that's what I'm trying to say is I think that God sees the end from the beginning, which we know He does. And if we learn to trust Him in the process and rehearse our testimony and build ourselves up as overcomers in the blood of the Lamb and the power of our testimony, it gives us strength for what we're going through, and it gives us encouragement for it. And God knows the end from the beginning. If I hadn't have taken a beating from 5 adults when I was a kid, I wouldn't have had the money to go on holiday. I wouldn't have had the money to go to, you know, and it wouldn't have lined up in that same way. And if I had had the money earlier, I wouldn't have kept it. It had to be when I reached of age and I got that money, went on holiday and met my future wife. And I just see that God is in every moment in your life, whether hard, whether good. He's in it all, and He brings it all around for good when you trust Him. So just thought I'd jump on here today and say that. God bless, and hope you're having a great day.